Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender, joined by Brian Henry, and we've got a good game to talk about to you today. Marquette came away from Athens, Georgia with an 89-79 victory over the Georgia Bulldogs on the road. Brian Henry, that was a great win to see.
Is something special happening? It feels like something special might be happening. I'm sure I'm going too far, but it feels like it.
It was definitely a hell of a step in the right direction, and I think, we ended our last podcast, the Georgia preview, with kind of the cautionary note that at some point in the second half against Georgia on the road, we were either going to be down or we were going to be losing the lead, and the crowd was going to get into it, and we were going to have to show what we were made of. Someone was going to have to step up. That situation happened exactly as we expected, and Sam Hauser stepped up in a big way. There were others that were involved, but I think seeing that from a freshman, hit a couple of big shots, and it's not like he just hit open shots and made them. He made smart cuts. He made smart plays. He put himself in a good position. That was wonderful to see from this Marquette team.
Let me address the run first. Like you just said, Mike, to have an opposing team in their building go on a run like that and to respond with an 11-0 run is something I don't think we've seen in a while. And then to follow that up, Sam Hauser, wow.
Yeah.
I think we all hoped that this was possible with him. I don't think anybody openly expects a freshman to have the ability to take over a game, and I don't think he's going to do it every single time we're out there, but he took over that basketball game in the second half. You're absolutely right. He hit open shots. He got balls off the glass and scored on putbacks. He hit contested shots. He came off screens and hit shots. From a standpoint of how now opposing teams are going to watch that film and are going to now openly try to guard him, whether that's going over the top on screens, flying out, it's going to open the floor even more. That Sam Hauser, that was one of the best performances by a Marquette freshman that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and you mentioned hitting open shots. Georgia cut our lead to 2 points right about the 7-15 minute mark. We get the ball, go on offense. Hauser makes a pass to Fisher in the corner. Fisher immediately gets double teamed, but Fisher doesn't panic. He sees a cutting Hauser. Hauser made a brilliant cut right to the hole. Fisher, nice touch pass, finds him. That was the and one. And then we go back on defense. There was a point in there where there were 4 Marquette guys trying to rebound against Yante Mayton, and Mayton beat them all out, and they got a second chance. That's something that can't happen going forward. By and large, that wasn't the case on the day. We were pretty good on the boards.
In fairness, Mayton did about, I think, what we all expected him to do. That's an elite player, and I think Marquette performed. They weren't unbelievable. They performed admirably against a guy that talent. I think Georgia should be ashamed at how much they struggle to get him the ball.
Yeah.
Because if they had better entry passes off the wing, I think what did Mayton finish with? I think
24, 6 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds.
And if it's possible, it almost felt like a quiet 24. Like
yeah.
It didn't feel like he was dominating the game like he very well. He could have gone for 30-plus easily. There were another 3, 4, 5 baskets on the floor that Georgia's guards just couldn't get him. But give credit to Marquette's wings for challenging entry passes.
Yeah.
Give credit to Wojo for developing a defensive game plan, which I give him a lot of credit for because it's guts to do, where on that high pick and roll when Mayton went up there, their defensive rotations rotated over onto Mayton rolling to the basket, and they dared Georgia's guards to knock down shots. I'll tell you what, if they had a good day hitting shots, Marquette would have been blown out of the gym because we gave up a lot of open jumpers. But that's why you do the scouting report.
Yep.
And the Dogs couldn't knock him down. That's how you got to play that way. You got to get a couple breaks, and that's how you get a big road victory. I don't think Georgia's going to be unbelievable throughout the year, but this was an important step, Mike. It was an important step to go on the road against a reasonably quality team with the young roster that we have, and not just play well and win, and they did that.
Yeah, and folks, I don't discount how good, we've talked about him a lot on this show, I'm sure you've heard it from other outlets as well. Don't discount how good Yante Maton is. He's a high caliber player. If you look at even the Ken Palm rankings, top 10 players according to him so far in the season. Unfortunately, Marquette has to play 3 of them. Josh Hart's Villanova, Yante Maton, who we played today, and then a fellow who we're going to see next week is Ethan Happ at Wisconsin. We'll get to that later in the week, though. So Yante Maton, definitely a high-caliber player. I thought J.J. Frazier, their 5'10", 6-foot point guard, had a pretty good game. 22 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists. He had a solid game, but largely Marquette was able to allow those guys to kind of go off. And like you said it, both of those guys, even though they put up 46 points combined, it was a relatively quiet game. They weren't able to streak it together. And credit that to Marquette's defense. There were, I had the chance at halftime and before we hopped on here to look at some tape. There were some defensive breakdowns. There were a couple instances where...
Absolutely there was. You don't let an opposing team score as many points as they did. It was not a perfect defensive effort by any means. You're right.
Yeah, so you see players like Marcus Howard, who had a great game all around, but kind of get caught looking at the ball, lose their guy, leave him open for a 3 or open to get in the lane and get to the hole. That happened to Andrew Rousey a couple of times, and I know there were other places. I think the pick and roll defense was better. I don't think it hurt us too much, but guys have been caught looking, and that's been a consistent theme throughout. Got to make sure your eyes don't get too stagnant. But one thing, and we were texting about this during the game, Caton Reinhardt went 2 for 7 from the 3-point line, but I thought by and large his defense was his one-on-one defense was pretty solid. He was asked to play up against some players, and I thought he put a body on them just about as well as he could have.
Him, Hauser, Matt Helt, who we need to spend some time talking about.
Yep.
The effort, one of the keys, and we did our preview for this Georgia game, was outside of knowing how good Maton is, the one thing Georgia did really well as a team was hit the offensive glass. They are an aggressive rebounding team. Only 8 offensive rebounds for Georgia in that game. Marquette pulls down 15. 15 offensive boards against a team that's not huge, but rebounds it well. Caton was a big part of that. You're absolutely right. Defensively, he was strong, but everybody on the interior today that came in and had to play a forward spot between all 4 of them, I thought they were. It was their best performance of the year for interior defense.
You mentioned Matt Helt there, and I remember very vividly in our preseason preview where we kind of walked down the roster. Nothing against the kid, but I think Matt Helt was almost an afterthought. We knew he was going to have to come in and play some minutes to spell Fisher when he got in foul trouble. This game was a perfect scenario of that. Fisher got in foul trouble. He had 3 fouls in the first half and was playing. I think he was playing with. Maybe he didn't get 4 in the second half, but he was definitely playing with 3. And Helt came in for 16 minutes and played some very solid minutes. His footwork, when you watch him, you're not overly impressed by his footwork and how he can get there, but he seems to kind of just get to a play in enough time to put a body in front of someone. So it's not like he's blowing anybody out of the water with his defensive prowess, but he's not hurting us like I potentially thought would be the case. He's putting himself in the right position to at least get between the defender and the hoop.
I won't dance around him, Mike. I didn't think he was capable of this at the start of the season. Now, I'll say this. Having watched all the games, I'm not totally shocked that he delivered this now. But when we were sitting there before the start of the year, I wasn't sure Woj would be able to put him in for any length of time. I think he only got on the floor for about 3 minutes in that first game against Vanderbilt when they were handling that Luke Cornett kid, the 7-footer. And I think he had 2 possessions where he had to guard him one-on-one, and he egregiously fouled Cornett both times. You just looked, you went, oh, God, how's he going to be able to handle it? He was guarding Maton for stretches of this game. He was rotating over and doubling on Maton when he wasn't the one guarding him, and he did it without fouling. I mean, the fact that, again, the two big stories, we're going to focus on Helt for right now, but the fact that in a game like that, to get Luke Fisher in foul trouble and to have Matt Helt come in and play 16 minutes and rebound the ball.
And out-rebound Fisher. he out-rebounded Fisher as
yes,
well.
in 16 minutes. And then on top of that, throw in the fact that, oh, by the way, our best scoring guard, Hanif Cheatham, but depending between maybe overall skill-wise, I know Juwan, obviously, numbers-wise, is probably right there with him, but the fact that Hanif, had one of his weakest games today, and we overcame that. We overcame that at the guard position, and we overcame it with our best big. You kind of go like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not as much, and I think this is the theme, Mike, when you were kind of addressing at the top regarding big picture. We still have to see where the season's going, but I'll say this about today. This definitely, if you're a Marquette basketball fan, and you are because you're listening to this, if you're not excited about the future, watching some of the young guys perform in that game, I mean, unbelievable.
Absolutely. Hauser hit a turnaround jumper on the baseline sometime in the second, or maybe it was the first half, I can't remember, but just a thing of beauty to watch him play. He's got all the tools. He's got the head. He's got the physical tools. It's going to be fun to watch him progress over the next number of years.
I want to back everyone down on Twitter that was making every Steve Novak comparison on the face of the earth. It depends which Steve Novak you're talking. Steve Novak as a freshman might be an apt comparison because you're right. That baseline play, how quickly he caught, squared, and got a release off, that's an incredible skill to have to be able to get your shot off that quickly. And the fact that he's 6'7", who knows if he grows another inch or two. Novak did while he was in school. If he turns into a 6'8", 6'9", stretch four that can rebound and hit shots like that, he has a potential to be special and play at the next level. Long way to go. Very long way to go. But when you just look at the raw skill set, there's no way you can't be excited about it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Novak grew a couple inches. Novak was about the same weight, or at least is right now, but a few inches taller than Hauser. So comparisons aren't totally off base, but
and let's be careful. Steve Novak's a 10+ year NBA veteran now.
Right.
I don't think that's fair comparing a 19-year-old to a guy who was a first-team All Big East player and again has played in the NBA for more than 10 years. So let's back it up a little bit. But yeah, we've seen something like him before, and naturally everybody wants to wrap their arms around that and go, oh, he's going to be that. Hopefully,
right.
But let him be him. That's that. If that's Sam Hauser, this team has a chance this season to get to the NCAA tournament. If that what we saw today is something that shows up throughout the year. I know it's not going to be there every night, but if that type Sam Hauser shows up, Marquette's going to have a chance to get into the NCAA tournament.
Marquette shot 44.8% from the three-point line. At one point, we were 9 from 11 from the three-point line in the first half.
It was insane.
It was insane, but trailed off in the second half. And I think the second half showed that when we don't have the three-point ball falling, and it's not always going to fall, we're going to need to find ways to claw back and get back in this game. As we said at the top, one of the things so promising about this game is that we found a way to do that in the second half on the road against a decent opponent. A lot of positives to take away from this game. I want to touch on a couple of things that maybe weren't positives but still need to be discussed. I thought I need to go back and watch the tape, but Hanif Cheatham obviously didn't have his typical game. We're not going to knock on a kid. No one's amazing. He didn't have a great game. In some of the film that I watched from the first half, he went to the hole 2 or 3 times and I think got swatted each one of them. And I don't know if that took his head out of it a little bit or kind of what it was. He didn't seem to be as after a couple of those swats, he got to the arc on a transition play and took a 3 and missed. Cheatham finished with just 2 points. So it's great that we can get a win without one of our best players on the road. But over the course of the season, we need Cheatham to fight through some of these things. What did you see from Cheatham? What do you think happened to him in this game?
His performance, it's something that happens during the course of a basketball season. Luke Fisher's going to have a lousy game at some point. I think today was his. He got taken out of it, and the sign of good teams are guys that step in and play for him. The guards that came in off the bench, whether it was Rousey, Carter, Dwayne, they came in and played well, picked him up. We got a couple points from everybody. Yeah, he didn't play well. I don't think it didn't seem like an outrageous game plan effort from Georgia. He missed shots. Yeah. I think it was that simple. He missed shots that typically fall for him. He struggled going to the basket, and it's funny that Georgia's not outrageously large, so it wasn't like it was crazy length. He just had a tough time finishing, which is his best characteristic, is finishing around the rim. I really wouldn't invest too much into it, and I'll tell you what, even in doing that and only playing 25 minutes, he still got 3 assists to toss in, so he was still contributing and going. It happens. He didn't play well. The rest of the team stepped up and at the guard position. That's your story coming out of today. Hanif will be fine going forward.
I want to talk before we head out of here a little bit about Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson finished 5 of 15 from the field, 1 of 2 from the three-point line, 16 points. Overall, a pretty great effort. One of the things we've seen and we all know about the steals. It's come to the point where you can expect at least 1 or 2 of those.
Another 5 steals today. Unbelievable.
Another 5 steals. There's a lot of good to talk about Juwan, but one thing that I think we need to see continued improvement from him on, he was 5 of 15 from the field. Juwan, and we've seen this since day one, he's gotten better, but he needs to get better. He has this tendency to drive to the lane and get lost, and that's where a lot of our turnovers happen. He'll find himself in the air, realize he can't do anything, and he'll drop it off, and either, maybe if we're lucky, it'll get to Fisher, and Fisher will make something happen. But Juwan has this tendency to kind of drive to the lane, and a lot of times it's not the best shot. I think Juwan has taken great strides. We mentioned this a number of times, but he still has these tendencies, and this happened kind of during this stretch when we were losing the lead and our lead was cut to 2. Hauser wasn't on the floor, and there were a couple of these plays where you just need more from your seniors. And I know our freshmen stepped up in a big way, and that's a very positive thing. But freshmen aren't going to carry you to NCAA tournament wins. We need seniors to play well. Overall, 16 points is great, but our seniors need to continue to cut down on some of these bonehead plays, particularly in crunch time of big games.
I'll say this about Juwan. Reflect back to when he was a freshman sitting on the end of the bench for Buzz Williams and could not get himself on the floor. What he has evolved into, I don't think anybody could have projected after his freshman year. I think a lot of people just assumed he would transfer after the coaching change. I'll say this. You're right, Mike. He does have his flaws, but I think he's a flawed player, and I think the way he's performing defensively, I think this is his ceiling. This is not meant as a dig. I think we can get a lot of production out of him. I think he's good enough to be a starter and a primary contributor on a solid Division I team. I think this team hits next level if Hauser and Howard are shooting the ball like they are. But I think Juwan, this is what Juwan is. He will turn the ball over a little bit. He will make a few bad decisions, and he will be overly aggressive in passing lanes and get burned backdoor a couple times. That's going to happen. That's what he is. I'm okay with it right now because the fact that we need some sort of contagious aggressiveness, which is hopefully spreading to the rest of the team, and he does that. He is what he is. I don't think Juwan's going to drastically improve by the end of the season. He's a senior. I think this is what you're going to get, and he was good today. He had a couple lapses, but his good outweighed the bad, and I think that's all you can ask for.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for our wrap-up here of Georgia. We have Marquette is going to face off against Fresno State on this Tuesday, December 6th. Marquette is favored, at least according to Ken Pomeroy, to win quite handily, considering in addition to the fact that Fresno State doesn't appear to be that good, it's also in Milwaukee. Brian Henry, any insight into the Fresno State game?
Fresno was an NCAA tournament team from a year ago, for those that remember, but as you alluded to, Mike, they lost a lot of bodies off of that team. It is not the same group. This is a game, if you're Marquette because you can't afford it, I don't want to hear the word trap game. They should not.
You don't want to hear it? Someone brought that up earlier.
I know someone did on a tech. We're not good enough to look ahead.
Yeah.
I don't think by any means that this roster has earned the right to be a point where they can sleepwalk by somebody. They have to get better. They have to have things they can improve on. Yes, the Wisconsin game next week is going to be absolutely huge. It's an opportunity for a win against a really quality opponent, which, again, if the NCAA tournament's your benchmark, that Wisconsin game is going to be big. They could use a big non-conference win. Don't overlook Fresno State. Play well against them and take care of business. I think that should be a 15, 20-plus point victory. No hesitation on it. And I think Wojo is getting their attention to the point where I don't think that they'll come up and no show on Tuesday. I'd be surprised if they did.
Marquette has moved up to 30th in the Ken Pomeroy rankings, and I agree. I think my final thought from this game is that not only is it a positive in the trajectory of the program for this season, but think about what it does for the confidence. If you can get a win against Fresno State, you're 6-2 right now. You'll be 7-2 if you beat Fresno State, and you have Wisconsin, who just had 2 solid wins against Syracuse and Oklahoma. Wisconsin could be in the top 10 by the time we play them, if not certainly in the top 15 when they come to Milwaukee. The Bradley Center better be loud as hell. And I think that's going to be a great atmosphere, and that's going to put these kids in a great position against Wisconsin.
I think it'll be a great atmosphere, and I think it's going to be because, and it hasn't been this way for the last couple years, it's always fun when the two teams play, but they're going to show up on the same court with higher aspirations in mind, and I think both fan bases and both coaches and both rosters know that they're capable of a high level of play, and that should hopefully lead to a very incredibly entertaining basketball game. We can only hope Marquette can pull off. While getting this one against Georgia is great, that loss to Pitt really hurts, and you'd like to steal one more big one in the non-conference schedule because, as we already said, there's 4 games on the schedule coming up against 2 teams in the top 10. And that's Xavier and Villanova, and they're not going anywhere. You're going to have opportunities at them, but they're going to be tough. See if you got a game at home here against Wisconsin. Go get it.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us today here at the Real Chili Podcast. We will have later this week a Wisconsin preview coming up for you. Included in that preview will be a conversation with the Wisconsin beat reporter from the Wisconsin State Journal, Jim Polzin. He'll give us some insight into the Badgers so far this season, how Nigel Hayes is looking, how Bronson Koenig is looking, and how Ethan Happ, how we should all be terrified of him. Brian Henry, any final thoughts from you before we sign off today?
Row the boat, Mike.
Row the boat. Row the boat. All right, folks, thanks so much for listening to the Real Chili Podcast. We'll be back in just a few days. We'll talk to you soon.